Full spoilers for Spider-Man No Way Home and The Batman. You've been warned. Both Spider-Man and Batman have recently graced the silver screen with big-budget tentpoles that cost a fortune, and both films made me nostalgic for their respective superhero movies in the 2000s. Namely, Spider-Man No Way Home made me reminiscent of the incredible craft deployed by Sam Raimi, Don Burgess and Bill Pope. Craft that is lacking in poorly lit, overly green-screened, sloppily scripted scenes meant to desperately tie together 2 decades of Spidey film canon so that Tom Holland can stand alongside Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. The Batman made me nostalgic for 2005's Batman Begins and 2008's The Dark Knight, but not because it is derivative of those movies, or because this iteration of Batman pales in comparison. It instead makes me think back to a time when these big budget movies flexed with awesome practical action and watertight scripts. It conjured the feeling of awe I had during the Christopher Nolan era. Spider-Man No Way Home only wants to reference the previous movies to create a feeling of joy in the audience. Franchises can only reference themselves now, a point The Matrix Resurrections made fun of, and rightfully so. The Batman looks to Seven the same way The Dark Knight looked to Heat. It features clear story and visual comparisons to other great movies, but it is something else all its own. It is the culmination of a seasoned writer-director in Matt Reeves, who has previously delivered the horror and action that proves he's right for the night. The Batman shows what has been missing from big budget movie making as seen in Spider-Man No Way Home. It's not an awful movie, but it doesn't go the extra mile to really deliver a gorgeous and thrilling experience like it could have. Greg Fraser's cinematography is impeccable. I can't believe that he has delivered to us Dune and The Batman across 2021 and 2022 respectively. This is some Bill Pope Matrix sequel Spider-Man 2 energy. The guy has always been crushing it. Look at the cinematography of Killing Them Softly from 10 years ago and you'll see that Fraser is a seasoned anamorphic master. Just look at this filth. I think sometimes it's hard for people to watch a movie like No Way Home and see why it is so flat and so uninteresting to look at, but then when you see a blockbuster like Dune or The Batman, it's easier to see what's missing. There is no mood or overpowering feelings that can be derived from the way New York is depicted in No Way Home. The colours are flat and the green screen pickup shots stick out like a sore thumb. The shadows are never dark enough to create real contrast, and when the camera does do something interesting, it feels like an experimental moment rather than a concerted effort to create cohesive visual language for the film. Whereas Matt Reeves' patience for voyeuristic angles certainly has a touch of Hitchcock and De Palma, evident in The Batman but also his earlier work. In Let Me In, the 2010 horror adaptation of the Swedish novel Let the Right One In, Reeves and DP Greg Fraser create some truly arresting work. It is a really telling mix of voyeurism, warm hues in a cold setting, and a great use of light and shadow that proved these two were perfect for a trip to Gotham City. Seriously, for a movie in winter it's actually very warm with nice burning orange colours that clearly precede the work done on The Batman. Like the winter months, we expect Gotham to come across colder and more blue in tone, but it works perfectly in both. Gotham is rainy and murky, but the warmer tones make the city feel ready to blow.
This is about a king, and Riddler's the match.
Protagonist of Let Me In, Owen, spies on various characters throughout the movie. When we watch people through someone's eyes, it immediately brings their perspective of events to the forefront. That's why this Batman feels like the focus, where other movies have perhaps seen him overshadowed by the villains. Everything feels very attuned to his understanding of the world and his reaction to events. The voyeuristic camera work as he spies on Selina or the mob, or records every inch of a crime scene really helps to sell this. Many final shots in the Batman movies are big and epic, but this movie ends on an intense, closely framed image of a heartbroken bat speeding away. I also let Spider-Man No Way Home off the hook in part because I knew it was a COVID shoot. As boring as it is to hold key conversations in jail cells, Benedict knows what that's like, it was of course necessary as a workaround to restrictions. But now that we've seen The Batman, a film that was also shot predominantly during COVID, there really is no excuse. Whilst there might be one too many returning locations, could the Bat and the Cat hold their meetings on a different roof? There is certainly character to the city of Gotham. It rarely feels restricted by COVID mandates because the cinematography works smarter, making great use of the screen technology Greg Fraser worked on with The Mandalorian. This stuff is so much better than green screen because you can actually light the room. The design of Gotham City helps this as well. Utilising British cities including Liverpool and Glasgow helps to capture the gothic feel as well as the animated series and the Arkham games. It feels claustrophobic and grimy and lived in. The way the city is designed and captured makes it so clear throughout the movie the hold that Falcone and the mob have. Of course New York is a real place, but that doesn't mean that production design couldn't have brought out more of its character. It doesn't help that the script for No Way Home leaves little time for the inhabitants of the city to make their voices heard. Peter has a FaceTime with J. Jonah and by extension the city, in which he explains the villain's being here is his fault, but we never get a sense of how the city views him past the first 30 minutes, and the finale takes place away from civilian danger, the obvious place for them to come into play. In the Batman's first appearance, the civilian he saves begs him not to hurt him, but by the end he transforms into a true hero, saving the drowning citizens from Riddler's real change. It leads to one of the best shots in the movie that perfectly captures the hopeful side to the character and proves he's more than just abject darkness. I thought most of the action in No Way Home was pretty bad. Sure, there was some decent hand-to-hand stuff between Holland and Dafoe in both the apartment scene and at the end, decent choreography that packs a wallop in the edit, and I can tell what's going on. Groovy, really. But in terms of the rest of it, I'm not so sure. In particular, the finale takes place on a dimly lit piece of scaffolding, no one really throws many punches, and there isn't a sense of jeopardy that is comparable to Green Goblin, Doc Ock, or even the Vulture by themselves. Seeing set photos of an abandoned moment between Tugboat and Dafoe just makes it even worse.
How the fuck would you show me something if I couldn't have it then?
I think this finale could have gone much harder. We should have gotten more rousing musical moments, more well-staged bouts between the Spider-Man and the Sinister Six 5. Green Goblin should have rocked Andrew and Toby's shit just as much as Holland's before that final beatdown. Everything is just so murky and hard to look at. The action in the Batman is fantastic. There's a subjectivity to the car chase that gives us a very frenetic energy. Reeves and Fraser choose to keep most of the action bolted to the cars, or we see the chase from inside the vehicles. This makes for a very personal and intense scene. It's a Batmobile chase that offers big bombastic thrills as good as in Batman Begins, but with a much more intimate, distinctive style. Both chases are great, and that's what I love about this film. Where other franchise fare can sometimes seek to be an inferior copy of its predecessor, this movie adds to Batcanon in a variety of glorious ways. Now I have several different fantastic Batmobile chases to enjoy, all captured very differently. The predominant use of interior vehicle shots calls to mind some of the greatest car chases to ever be put to screen. The French Connection, Bullet, To Live and Die in LA, the former Reeves has recently cited as a direct inspiration. These chases are so good because they have such a clear point of view. To Live and Die in LA consistently throws more and more trouble at the car, and we track every reaction, every fear, every fuck it moment from within the car. Throughout the chase in the Batman, we very much get into the mind of the rageful, determined Bat, and the poor Penguin who is terrified and way in over his head. The brief moment where he thinks he's finally dusted the Bat is memorable because we feel his relief so wholeheartedly, and it's frankly hilarious to see his face drop straight after. And the sound design, my word. As Batman walks across a crime scene or emerges out of the shadows, the sound design for his suit is immaculate. The metal clanks and you can even hear the squeaks of the leather and possibly black
rubber.
Everything has such a great tactile nature. The burst of his grapple guns as they taxi driver out of his wrists, the nuts and bolts that shift from the vibrations of the terminals above the Batcave. In particular, the metallic sounds not only sell you on the body armour he frequently makes use of, but when his entrances and walks are framed like that of a cowboy, the sound design accentuates that. Everything feels like it has this care and craft behind it.
Go left, go left, yes. What are you talking about? Right. I want to right.
Have you noticed how most blockbusters now can't ever get their characters to shut up? We seldom let the action speak for itself. Someone has to crack wise or deliver a piece of the plot to keep things moving. The Batman was a breath of fresh air in terms of this. Rather than seeing a flashback to the Wayne's murder, Bruce locks eyes with another child who's experienced the same trauma, and Nirvana's Something in the Way drops. The story is told in the cut. In this moment we learn everything we need to know about Bruce's mental state, his empathy, and the pain that drives him. Michael Giacchino's score rises as we see it flourish paired with the action. A good score is only really as memorable as how well it is used in the movie. Toby and Andrew's spiders have some of the best themes, and I can barely register a moment when they came into play. Sure, they played them in subtle ways during one or two little moments, but why didn't we ever get them in full? Wouldn't it make sense to get more of that in the final battle? Or a medley of all three themes? That would have been awesome. Michael Giacchino's Can't Fight City Halloween, or Bat in the Rafters Part 2, or Highway to the Anger Zone are all great tracks that perfectly complement the action and are given the time to really be heard. If you think it's unfair to use No Way Home as a point of comparison, consider that this movie made over $1 billion at the box office as part of a well-oiled machine that has destroyed mid-budget movies. All the detractors really want is some filmic elements to be used in a more creative and engaging way than they currently are. Matt Reeves isn't pleased about the current landscape of theatrical releases either, but knows that if superheroes are here to stay, they better be damn good. So whilst Batman 12 is still Batman 12, no matter how you title it, there is at least a creative vision, a satisfying mood, action that soars, and well-drawn characters. If you want to hear my more in-depth thoughts on No Way Home, then please check out my video review. Might have some answers to the questions you're going to angrily comment at me now. And please check out my Batman supercut on the channel. It's my first video that's a pure supercut. You know I love cutting action together, and if you like it too, then this will be right up your street. Or not, but either way, please give it a watch. Thank you. A big thank you to my full fat tier patron, Dr. Chike. If you'd like to donate money to my Patreon, you can find me at patreon.com/fullfatvideos. If you'd like to find me on Instagram, you can find me at full_fat_videos. And if you'd like to find me on Twitter, you can find me at, you guessed it, at fullfatvideos.